Welcome, BrookingsBiology students. This is Mrs. Rydell back again to talk about more cell parts. Today we're going to talk about the cytoskeleton. And remember when we talk about vocab, bio words, a lot of, if you look at the word itself, it tells you something about what the meaning is. And skeleton in a cytoskeleton, in a cell, cyto means cell, is pretty much what you already know your skeleton is like in your body. It helps to maintain your shape, hold you up, give you movement. And so the cytoskeleton, this little skeleton made out of cell pieces in the cell, are going to do the same thing for a cell. It gives it shape, helps to move things. Cytoskeleton is made out of proteins, and the proteins that make the cytoskeleton are called actin, which makes little filaments, microfilaments, and tubulin, which makes little tiny tubes, microtubules. Remember, the word micro means small. And those go together to make a framework inside the cell to act as a skeleton, just like your skeleton does for you. We're going to add some information to our flip book, and then we're going to see if we can find some pieces of skeleton in our cell pictures. So I'm asking you to find your cytoskeleton page, and we're going to add that the cytoskeleton is made of proteins called microtubules and microfilaments, small tubes and strings that make the framework for the skeleton of our cell. And the function now of cytoskeleton, it helps to maintain the cell shape, just like your skeleton does for you, helps to support you, hold you up, and helps in movement, moving things around inside the cell. Now, if you could imagine what your body would look like if you lost all your bones and you would just be kind of a big blob. You wouldn't be able to move, you wouldn't have shape. And if you saw the Harry Potter movie where he lost all the bones in his arm and kind of was all floppy and squishy, that's what your skeleton does for you. It gives you shape, it helps to hold you, support you, and helps in moving things. And that's what the cytoskeleton does for the cell. We're going to look and see if we can find some little pieces of cytoskeleton in our cell picture. So I'm going to ask you to put your flip book down. We're going to find our cell picture. And so far we have colored our plasma membrane, our cell membrane, and we colored our nucleus. And I'm going to ask you to pick two colors, and kind of similar because they kind of go together. Those tubules and filaments, microtubules, microfilaments, go together to make the skeleton. So I'm going to ask you to pick like 2 shades of blue or 2 shades of green, and that kind of helps us know that those two pieces go together. So I'm going to color my microtubules first, and let's start with our animal cell. If you've ever made Kraft macaroni and cheese in the blue box, it's the cheesiest. You know what a microtubule looks like in this picture. It looks like a little tiny microtubule, right? A little tube. Let's get some blue here. So here's one here. Here's one here. We're looking for Kraft macaroni and cheese in our cell. Little microtubules, mini tubes. And if you look, the cell picture kind of shows them in little pieces in the cell. But in an actual cell, they're going to actually connect together to make kind of a framework. Think like a jungle gym, if you've ever seen those climbing bars. They kind of make a frame connected together. That's kind of hard to show in a picture when we want to show all these other cell parts. But you got to think 3D, think living cell, they're going to be connected. Okay, let's look in our plant cell. Can we find some macaroni and cheese? Microtubules. There's one here. Here's one here. There's a couple more over here. A couple down here. I'm going to color in our microtubules. Did I miss any? I think we're good. Okay, and let's look. Bacteria also has a shape, right? And so we have some microtubules in our bacteria cell as well. They don't have quite as complicated as cytoskeleton as eukaryotes do, but they do have a skeleton to help hold them and support them and help them move. Okay, our other piece of our skeleton is the little strings, microfilaments. And I'm going to use a similar shade of blue to do the strings. Look for the little strings in your cells. These are tiny microfilaments. And they help connect inside the cell to make the skeleton of our cell. We have them also in our plant cell. Plants have shape. Maybe not quite as many. Did I get them all? And we're going to put a couple up here in our bacterial cell. Okay, so let's get our labels in. Your whatever color you colored your microfilaments, I'm going to ask you to fill that in on your label, because remember we're color coding now, so we can tell what goes with what. Everything's going to be a different color. And use your microtubule color to fill in your microtubule name. And then I'm going to do this because remember, anytime you can color code or help you remember something, I'm going to use both of those colors to write the word cytoskeleton, because the cytoskeleton is made out of both of those kinds of proteins. So cytoskeleton has got microtubules and microfilaments. So I'm going to use both of those colors to make my cytoskeleton label. Very good. Okay, let's go back and talk about another cell part, and has to do with the cytoskeleton. And what we're going to do is to look at a little video or a little animation. Because remember we said cytoskeleton helps things move in the cell. And this is one of my favorite cell parts. And it works with the cytoskeleton as part of the moving things around in the cell. And there's actual little transport motor proteins that work with the cytoskeleton. And they have little feet, and they're really cool. They walk along on the cytoskeleton like kind of like a tightrope walker walking. And they carry things. If you want something to move in a cell, like a vesicle to carry something, organelles moving in cells, chromosomes moving during cell division, what the cell does is attach them to one of these little motor proteins and then actually walk it along the cytoskeleton in the cell. They're called made out of proteins called kinesins. Kinetic has to do with moving, and they're called motor proteins, and their job is to move things inside the cell. I'm going to show you another animation. This is a really cool animation that some animators that actually work for like fancy movie, do all the animations for movies and things, got together with some scientists and made an animation of what they thought cell parts would look like in a cell. And so we're going to just quickly watch a little clip of this. We're going to watch the whole thing later. But I want you to see these crazy motor proteins. Here are his little feet, and it's carrying this big vesicle. And they actually walk along on the cytoskeleton to move things inside the cell. I'm going to back up a little bit because I think this is like one of my favorite cell parts. So I'm going to watch this again. These are the microtubules forming and unforming, and here come those little motor proteins walking on the cytoskeleton. I love those guys. Okay, let's go back and we're going to talk about another important cell part, which has to do with moving things around inside of our cell, and that is the centrioles. Centrioles are only in certain kinds of cells, and they're only there at certain times. And they look kind of familiar. Where did we see? Look at those. Look at the shape of this. It kind of looks like Kraft macaroni and cheese, only a whole bunch of them all hooked together in a really cool pattern. This is centrioles, and they are made out of microtubules. Those microtubule proteins arranged in this pattern, and their job is to help to get the chromosomes, guide the chromosomes apart during cell division. So if you look at that mitotic spindle, the little strings that move the chromosomes apart, the spindle fibers are made out of microtubules. And at the end of the cell, in an animal cell during cell division, at the end of the cell, we see that little pattern of microtubules in a cylinder. At each end of the cell, those are the centrioles. And they attach to the spindle fibers. Their job is to help guide the chromosomes apart during cell division. And so they're a pretty important part of cells, and an important part in their life cycle, which is during cell division. So we're going to put something in our flip book about centrioles. Centrioles are made of microtubules. Those same little tubular proteins that make the cytoskeleton also make up the centrioles. The interesting thing about centrioles is they're only seen in animal cells. We don't see them in bacteria, we don't see them in plant cells, other kinds of cells, but animal cells have them, and they only are visible in the cell during cell division. Their function now is to help to guide the chromosomes apart. And they organize the spindle. They get it set up when the cell is dividing. They help to organize and set up the spindle formation in a dividing cell. Does that mean that those other kinds of cells can't divide if they don't have centrioles? Of course bacteria divide and plant cells can divide. They just do it a little different way, and we don't see the centrioles. We don't see centrioles in those cells, but cell division can still happen in those cells, and we're going to talk more about cell division later. Okay, let's look at our slideshow now and see if we can find some centrioles in our cell picture. So if we look now, here's our cell parts, and remember we've done nucleus, we've done cell membrane, we've done our cytoskeleton, and now let's look at centrioles. We're going to do a little color code. Look like those little cylinders right here. Let's color one in. And remember, they're only in animal cells. We don't see them in plants. We don't see them in bacterial cells. They're only in animal cells. So we're going to mark centrioles. And notice down here our label says only in animal cells. Centrioles are only seen in animal cells. So we're going to color code our label. We got our centrioles in. And I think we're done for now. Stay tuned for our next slideshow about more cell parts.